Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once more to the Common Law Court for Wales radio show. We have Mr. Paul Webster, who's going to be taking us through the pros and cons of the fraud and everything with the utility bills and how the courts try to scam us and actually participants in the scam along with the private corporation. We'll get straight into it. Mr. Webster.
I'm third time lucky this, is it?
Yeah, we can, sir, yes. Now, there's been a bit of drama trying to get Paul on, just to give people a little outline. We've actually been trying to get him on for several weeks now, but let's say the gremlins in the system weren't too pleased about it, and no matter how we tried, we were unable to get him on, Paul. Fingers crossed, all ready to go this evening, yeah?
Yeah, crack on, lads. Let's get it.
So this information needs to be heard, and so let's get straight on to it. Now then, Paul, what inspired you to, get on this road of truth and uncovering the scam within the financial system and specifically how the utility companies go about their business?
Stubbornness. After finding out, after being ignorant to certain kinds of information, you start picking little bits up from here and there. I mean, it starts off through me looking through this accepted for value, but I couldn't get it. I couldn't find the mechanism where they accept it. They were all saying they didn't know what it was and they were sending me stuff back. Closest I got to it was Argos. An Argos manager admitted that they used to accept it, but they don't anymore. But then I got put onto the bills of exchange, and you go into a bit of history and you start to try and get an understanding of an economy that had collapsed, was put onto the labour force, making creditors of that public and the resources public. So this is why when they send you a cheque, because this credit account they've got access to, so they get paid, because it's your resource under a domestic agreement, it's a negotiable instrument. It's not liable. It's as plain as that.
Okay. If you just back up a little bit for some listeners who may not be familiar with the technology we're talking about, what is accepted for value? I know that was the first avenue you went, which took you onto the bills of exchange, which we'll certainly get into in a little while. But just for people who may never have heard the term accept for value or A for V before, can we just explain exactly what that is?
Yeah, right? It's like it was just like a stepping stone, that though. It was leading you onto what credit is and what this monetary system is based on. It's based on absolutely nothing. It's all based on promise. Everything's completely based on promise. And because this country has an economy, you became that creditor that's inherited from when this economy collapsed. So you've got to try and understand that there's some kind of mechanism where this government is at some point they meant to be working for you. So this credit is generated for you. The people who argue that, well, where would this credit come from? Who pays for the services and the maintenance? Somebody's got to dig those roads and this is why companies come here. They are liable. If they get a paper bill, they don't get a cheque sent to them. It was accepted for value was that first attempt. Like I said, I didn't have any success with it, but I did find information out. But I believe I wouldn't understand how the accepted for value would work, because when I flipped over onto this one, where I got given a bundle because I'll briefly tell you how it happened. British Gas messed 3 payment plans up, and I got that sick of it. I thought, right, okay, I'm going to have to do something with this. And I was speaking to this guy about it, and he says, well, it's a bill of exchange. He started to explain it, went into depth of it, came down, met me, gave me this bundle. I changed this bundle to suit me, and I thought, right, they've applied for a warrant. I'm going to go and stop this now. Now, that put me on to what the warrants are for, what they're applying for. They're applying for a warrant of entry, which is a criminal warrant. Now, that can't be issued for a monetary dispute, which is what these companies are claiming. So, what is it actually being claimed under? It's the Gas Act. They are presuming that you are the idiot on the street that could blow the entire street up. You know, we need to check the supply. So I went to court, said this is a monetary dispute. There's my bundle, this one I've paid it, bills of exchange, blah, blah, blah. The gas agent stands in the door and stated, this isn't a health and safety issue. This is a monetary dispute. And I said, well, that's it, you're in the wrong jurisdiction then. So the legal clerk, he's going through the bundle, and the magistrate said, bills of exchange, and the legal clerk spun around his chair and says, yes, ma'am, that's a civil remedy we don't deal with in this jurisdiction. That's an interesting word, that, remedy. You know, it started to make you start to think there's some teeth in this. I'm experiencing some kind of teeth in it. So we adjourned this, and from the gas agent who outside the courtroom said, I have 200 of these stamped off every week. He only had 199 that week because it was adjourned to go before a district judge. That district judge met a gas man who handed me a note about promissory notes and debt avoidance techniques gleaned from the internet. And it's not a promissory note. It's an actual payment. You're meant to be paying me as my agent. You're the one that's not doing this right. Come to court and sort it out. Anyway, he adjourned it for 56 days. Bundle went to the legal department allegedly of British Gas. From the end of those days, I turned up at court. Nobody's there, no documents. Warrant thrown out. The ending to that was January last year. They applied for another warrant, and I turned up, and there was a young girl there. And I said, are you the agent for British Gas? And she said, yes. And I said, right. I said, I'm Paul Webster. I said, you legally trained? She said, no. I said, well, I'm going to put you in the dock. I'm going to cross-examine you. And she said, no, you're not. She took the warrant out, put an X through it. And that was another warrant done. About 3 weeks later, I went back with my mate who decided he was going to take this on as a bit of support. And she sees me and she said, Mr. Webster, I've got nothing for you. The magistrates won't even hear any more applications for your property. I said, it's all right. I said, I'm not here for me. I'm here with him this time. He's doing the same. He says, what's your name? I told him his name. He says, no, you're not. And she took his warrant out and just did it. Now, I can't get British Gas to engage with me over anything. Nothing at all. It's just absolute stonewall. So that's what I'm saying. That's the process that I followed by doing the bills of exchange routes. Oh, it's stopping that warrant. It's stopping them putting that meter in. It's the pretense that it's health and safety. So you take that away from them by saying, come and check the supply, replace like for like, but you're not putting a pay as you go in. You know, it's stopping that. A lot of people ignore the warrant, which, in my ignorance, I ignored one. I turned up at the house, and at the house there was 6 coppers, a locksmith, a warrants officer, and a gas man. And I get there, and the policeman says to me, you're going to have to let him in, mate, he's got a warrant. I went, are you here as peacekeeper or bailiff today? And he went, oh, we're just here to keep the peace. And he said, then your opinion's not warranted. And the policeman just left it then. That was it. Never said another word. Turned to the warrants officer, I said, you try and get entry to my property, and we'll remove it by any means necessary. And they never tried to get in. Warrant cancelled just over the phone. So I was a bit lucky there that I managed to head them off. But this time I got a little bit ahead of the game because I thought, right, I'm going to go and attack this warrant. And once you did that, they just ran off. They just don't engage with you. They just don't talk to you. You know, as long as they don't turn up, you can't get a judgment. You know, it's just like a game.
Well, that's exactly what it is. Before we go into how the different jurisdictions play the part within the setting of the magistrate's court, Paul, I just want to back up a bit. You mentioned the bills of exchange, so just for any other listeners who have never heard that term before, I'm just going to give them a brief little thing.
Yeah.
The Western system that we are under today is what they call a fiat system. But the way the system is set up, which use fractional reserve banking, which for anyone who doesn't know out there, the banks merely need £1 in order to lend out 10. So they have to leverage what they have on the books 10 to 1. Now, along with this, is what they call compound interest, which is that they print the principal, which is the money itself, but of course they never print the interest. Well, over time, the combination of these factors and many more, there's so much joking money created in existence because of the 10 to 1 factor that eventually there is simply too many digits or too much joking money to cover any assets that are actually within the nation or in fact within the world. So in order to balance the books, the fiat party began. In order for this money to have any, to be used in law, they have to make some acts and pass laws and whatnot. Now one of these was the Bills of Exchange Act. What's the Bills of Exchange Act?
The difference with the Bills of Exchange, as being a creditor, like I was saying, in this economy, there's only credit and debt. You are a creditor. You have this magical credit account that, you know, I believe Simon Stanley is trying to work a mechanism around to this, because all corporations are tapped into it. Also, instruments that you get under the domestic agreements, none of the Consumer Credit Act applies. It's not commerce. You're not profiteering from it. So you're, as a creditor, you can write this stuff off, and particularly with natural resources, that's public domain. Try and forget about this privatisation thing. British Gas don't own that gas. That gas is already there. The grid's already there. The maintenance that grid is paid for by the companies. The gas is yours as a creditor. People have got to try and buy into that concept. If you promise to pay for something, you've still got to pay for it at some point. You were making some good points about the fractional reserve. There's got to be twice as much because there's got to always be debt and more debt to pay for the credit. If nobody's borrowing, there's no way to pay that because they just make the money up. That's why it's a perpetual debt. That's why we're being robbed blind. It's a scary thing when you start waking up in the middle of it. I'm sorry for that for nothing.
The method then, which we talk about in Pacific, is because we're operating in bankruptcy, because of fractional reserve banking and all the fraud.
You've said about balancing the books. That's what it is. Domestic agreements and the commercial agreement.
Right.
Two totally different. Under a domestic agreement, the creditor's bank, the commercial bank, pays the agent. So the agent tells the grid owners or whoever do the meter readings, they zero that account. But then the man must be compensated because they're taking it from your credit that you're not liable for under those agreements. That's why the Bills of Exchange and the Consumer Credit Act, that's Section 123, it was specific. I put that in the bundle. The bundle went away, and I can't get any answers. It's like you're thinking, is this real? Does this really work? You know, you're getting confirmation from all different places. You know, you're expecting to be up against solicitors and stuff like that, and nobody appears. It's a bit daunting to think that you're standing right on the edge of something that, if this is proven, if there's proof of claim here, then everybody's being robbed blind because you're ignorantly double paying them, because they've obviously been paid because they're sending you a check, but you're sending them back with cash, or even worse, you direct debit to them, knock your fibre off. You see that how that looks? That looks like are they knowingly involved in that extortion, or is it because we are just being ignorant? Because the way the language is written, you know, you've got to get yourself into some gears to understand how some of these words are twisted. I've had district judges ask me to my face, am I here in person? You know, that sounds very stupid. But if you're there in person, you're there as that company. You adhering to the rules, you've given a jurisdiction. You've got to have a whole different way of thinking. And when you start calling them out on it, I've seen district judges reduced to actions of 5-year-old children. It's madness. Absolute madness that's going on in these places.
Indeed it is, Paul. When finally twigged that it was a matter of jurisdiction. Could you go into that a bit for us, please?
Jurisdiction is was to regard to the warrants. If they want to gain a warrant of entry, that comes under a criminal act. So they must suspect you of a possible crime. That crime, what they're getting the warrant under is the 1954 Gas Act, which talks about nothing to do with monetary. So what they're doing is they're going and standing in the magistrate's court applying for a criminal warrant because you could be that man or woman who is risking the entire street going up in a gas explosion because you won't let them check your meter. But they're applying for that warrant under false pretense. Whether it's knowingly or not at this stage, we don't know. Applying for that criminal warrant, but they want to put a payment meter to hold you ransom to give you, for you to have to pay them to get your gas that you aren't liable for. And they're applying through a magistrate's court. So you stop that warrant dead. What now can they do? They've got to take you to a county court who will have to listen to bills of exchange. And if they send somebody legally trained, they're obliged to tell you how that mechanism works. That's the only reason I can see why they won't just take you to court and blow me out the water if this is no good. And you can be stuck in limbo. You're thinking there's teeth in this, but you're just stuck in limbo. They just ignore you. The longer it goes, do the odd, debt collection agencies and bailiffs might be coming and all this, but there's a lot of ifs, maybes and could be to what we do.
But in order to extort that money after being presented with the law, as you were doing, that would just be out and out fraud.
Yes, but you see, society's got that used to how this thing works. It's like that program, Don't Pay, We'll Take Away. It gives me Tourette's, that program. I can't watch it. Because people are voluntarily giving people this stuff. Now, some people can get confused because bailiffs sometimes do have the powers to just break into your house, but it's got to have been, in my experience, if you've ever consented anywhere down the line, i.e., if you've ever let them in the house at any one point, if you've ever gone to court and made a payment plan or set anything like that, you've got a problem there. So you might get instances where it's an enforceable warrant. I don't know, but if you start from scratch, you can stop these people because they haven't got these powers. But the threats, I've known people that's come up against some proper intimidation. It's not for the faint-hearted, some of this stuff. And I think as you get into the inner cities now, you see the police either being ordered not to intervene or it seems worse to me as you head towards the inner cities. I don't know, do you experience anything like that?
Well, the bailiffs in our area, I believe there's only two that actually have a license to operate legally. The others are just cowboys and charlatans, third-party interlopers and absolute terrorists. And most places are the same. I find they tend to employ the same kind of people who are. You've got to be a certain type of. Let's say you've got to be a certain type of character to be a bailiff. And
I think so. I think there's certain characteristics. I think you're right.
And to actually enjoy it, you've got to be a certain. Absolute. I know a lot of people will say, well, I'm just doing my job. I got to keep my roof. Some of them love it. The heartache they cause on a daily basis, week in, week out in every town and city. This is why this information is essential in defending ourselves against this, because it really is.
Work out that it's been fed industry as well. That particular debt collection type stuff has been an intentionally fed machine for at least last 15, 20 years. Everybody remembers the bailiffs, but not on a scale like there is now. You've got every man and his dog claiming that they've got a right to walk into people's property. And the amount of people that, through not knowing what the natural rights are and what they can and they can't do, they're allowing themselves voluntarily, they're consenting in all weird and wonderful ways. It's how they speak to you, it's what information they get from you. You're trained in it as a kid. I was trained to always answer a telephone by giving the number out and stuff like that. And you think, why would you give information out? You've got people who ring people up and say, can you confirm your details? And you say, yeah. And you say, well, go on then. He says, no, you tell me, and then I'll confirm. No, you've got to tell me. Well, why have I got to tell you? Because they can't tell me who I am. I've got to tell them. Why? I'm on a call that's being recorded. This all starts to piece in as consent. It's very, very weird and wonderful ways to train.
Well, yes, and when you're conditioned, as we all have been, so the doctoration of the schooling we've had, and then you add into that the elements that the police and the courts, which are usually hired out for the day by these companies, are all working in coordination on a private level. They're all together in this, Paul, aren't they? You can't get from it. I mean, the police are assisting, the courts are complicit. It's one merry-go-round, and it needs to stop.
Well, I experienced it firsthand. I went to county court. Now that's a civil matter. I own half of the property. Now my 50% is my property. Nobody has authority over my property. Nobody. Absolutely nobody can touch my property. Yet a county court decided that they could take my property, give it to somebody else, sell it, and just disperse the proceeds of what they've just done. And I went, well, tell me under what jurisdiction, what authority. And when that question was asked, 4 months later, armed response police attended that waiting room.
Good grief.
Now, that, whilst I was in court with 2 police in front of me, 2 at the side of me and 2 behind me, after just that one question, this is a sale of a house, right? This is over the sale of a house. I asked that one question, never had an answer to why that was called, but over the next 5 hearings, I had over 30 police officers present, including the armed response, video evidence gatherers. No explanation as to why they did that. But, because I was representing myself and I was saying, no, you can't do this, no, you can't do this, you can't take my pen off me and give it away. Now, the other person who owned that property, what they did with that property, they sold their half. I don't have a leg to stand on. I'm done. But you can't take mine and do this. That was the argument. But they have nothing, they didn't want to hear it. They did not want to hear it. They could not hear me because I was standing as a man. They said to me, you need the rules in case you do. And I said, yes, I do. And they don't apply to me unless I give you my consent because you have no authority. Yes, I do. And I falsified no documents. And I witnessed that with my own eyes. So I say my property's been stolen. I have to go to the police who've been present at these hearings, report it. I eventually get a constable to take the statement. After an hour and a quarter, the constable understood that no, you can't do that. That's your property, they can't. No, that's. Went to the detective sergeant and said it's a civil matter. So now I have to go back to the people who just stolen my property and pay them to argue it against the judge who's just done that to me. That's how ridiculous that system was. So where do you go from there? It's as simple as that. You can't say that. I mean, the police sergeant says the armed response team, that's my mate outside, why are we here? They didn't know why they'd been called. And that's taxpayers' money. This is how ridiculous, I'm in the middle of something like that. That's just incredible that something like that could happen. You just wouldn't think of it. But that's what was opening my eyes as regards to what was happening in the law. It was learning the difference between the lawful and the legal. Like we were saying about jurisdictions, I sat with a solicitor. I mean, the only honest solicitor that I've met so far. I sat with him for an hour and a quarter, and I asked him, where does a judge get jurisdiction and authority over my property to take it off me? And he couldn't quite remember. So he gets on his phone and dials internally, and he chats to this fella, and he says, that's it, thank you very much. And he puts the phone down. And as he says what he'd just been told on the phone, I said at the same time, I went, trustees of Land Act. And he went, yes, that's it. I went, what's an act? That doesn't apply without my consent. And I said, it doesn't, it requires my consent. And he said, I don't understand. So I said to him, I said, there's a sign on the wall, £1,000 fine, no spitting. And there's a policeman stood next to it, and I spit on the floor. I said, are you going to arrest me? He said, no, it's not an arrestable offence. Is he going to fine me? He says, yes. He said, how's he going to do that? He said, he's going to request your details. I went, but I'm not obliged to give him my details if I've not committed a crime. He said, no. I went, so how's he going to fine me? And he sat back in his chair, and he said, I've done this job for 26 years, and you've just coached me on the difference between legal and lawful. That's how indoctrinated some people are into that system that's law. This is not law. This is where people go to engage in negotiations over commerce voluntarily. Most people will take a solicitor. Well, that solicitor is bound by the civil procedure rules and gives jurisdiction. So you've got your guardian, you're never going to be heard. But the fact is, if you walk into their rooms, because it's not court, you go into their room and say, this doesn't apply to me, any honest judge should surely say, you're quite right. There's nothing to answer here. I can't do anything. That's what a judge should be saying. However, that didn't happen. So, what else can you think of what's going on here? I've met one nice judge who recognised me as a man and didn't give jurisdiction, and that was thrown out over the next piece of property. But we come back and they had the same judge again. So you start to think, even though you're paranoid, it doesn't mean they're not after you. There's something not right here.
They're taking our liberties. They're violating every law there is under the common law. Every country that is signed in this treaty.
But everything's been voluntarily. That's what I'm saying. Everything's been through consent. I mean, it's like when you register your car, you give your car away. You're not the owner of that car. You're the keeper now. It's the same when you register property. It's the same when you register children. You're looking after the government's property because you've given it to them. It's all very strange. It's all very mixed up. Everybody's learning new things every day. But you can see the bigger picture that, the veils, it's not thin anymore. It's very transparent. It's only people who don't bother researching everything. If you get stuck into just certain places where you're looking, you're not doing this stuff right because, you have to look at everything, and assimilate it for yourselves. You're never going to believe stuff like this. I mean, I've been told when I talked about bills of exchange that I talk absolute shit. And these people have never even heard of the Bill of Exchange Act, but yet I'm talking absolute shit. That's, the people are so very asleep with stuff like that. I mean, 10 years ago I wouldn't have been where I am now. I had to virtually lose everything to get to know this stuff. I was only saying, before all this started, there was an offer on the table that had been accepted but then took back. And if that offer had been accepted, I'd have been paying double my mortgage and watching Emmerdale. That's how things change. But people are waking up. It's been a godsend, some of this stuff, but it's been hard. You know, all I can go off is my experience. Nobody's told me. Nobody said this is what that is. I'm not surmising. I'm not copy and pasting like some people have been. I've done it, and that's the result. Is it correct? I don't know. I don't know because I can't get anybody to answer it. At least not officially, whatever the blue real that means.
Well, it's certainly a result.
It's nice to talk to people who are actually doing some research and, you know, it's,
I mean,
I have a lot of people who are asking questions, but it's stuff that you've covered a long time ago. And, you know, people are asking, hey, I've got this about my parking ticket. And, you know, you always start off with, look, you either pay it or you don't. It's one of those two things you've got to decide first. If you're scared, pay it. Don't do anything. Carry on. You're not ready. Like I said to you before, I wouldn't recommend anybody taking this on, especially if you're running 3 jobs, kids. It's too difficult. It's too difficult, and it's far too easy to say, oh, those people don't help because they're just feeding the system. Everybody's caught in their own web. I feel like we've all had our own indoctrination, we've all had our own programming, we've all had our own deprogramming. Nobody's at the same point, but there is a common denominator. Everybody feels that there's a change, and that's a very strange thing because I've never been so aware of what the world is than I am now. When I was absolutely ignorant as well. As you yesterday, but I can't compare it. It's like a complete detachment, but I didn't realise it when it was happening. It's only now that I look back, I can piece it all together. It's a surreal feeling. It's like I said, it's been very strange. I could have been so different. It would have been such a different reality.
Yes, it certainly is a peculiar road that's brought us where we are. Yeah, I can certainly testify to that. Conditioned mind certainly needs a bit of proof along the way, and how that proof sometimes comes is magical and sometimes shocking. But yeah, we'd all go going in the same way, my friend, and with organisation, as I know I keep on banging the drum about this, but I believe this is the key. You know, it's my opinion that we have this opportunity to organise on a global level. It needs to start off in the communities, but in order to enforce the will of the people, it's going to take awareness. And well done for spreading the word, my friend. You're certainly doing a great job, and we just got to keep on and crack on with it, my friend, don't we?
We all do our bit. We all come from different angles. We all just need to get words out of what we've done. Whether it's worked or not, that will just stand up, you know, in the test of time, won't it? At least there's more than chinks in the armour. There's just something in it. That Phillips exchange, it just jumps out. It just ran. It ran like, oh, it was unreal.
This is it. Got it in a nutshell, I think.
It's all or nothing now for them.
It's all or nothing for them. That's exactly right.
You've got the military is waking up. Some of the police are awake, but a lot of people are caught in that mortgage, house being taken stuff. Stuff like what's happening with Tom, stuff like what happened with Guy, stuff like what happened with me, all different aspects of the same system, of the same cancer that people are used to having to drag themselves to a place to beg and negotiate their own property. That's not how it works. But that's how we've been indoctrinated to think it works. And we've always gone along with it. You get a summons, you go to a solicitor, that's what you're taught. When you realise why you taught it, it's all about consensually paying these people for nothing.
No. It's little things like we are doing here this evening.
Exactly. Communities like this that are allowing people who have found a little something to add to the jigsaw. giving them a platform. Vinny Eastwood gave me my first chance to get some of this information out. It's stuff like, when Vinny's having his YouTube channel wiped out, you know what people are causing some form of an impact. You know, you see the small grassroots movements. That's where it's only ever been one or a few people that have ever changed anything anyway. People need to stop thinking. It's alright saying we need a global change, yes we do. But we can't just jump to that. It's too far. That's what they expect us to try and do. The other thing is they want us to respond with violence. And that's what they're being trained to do. That's why the people who are being trained to do this need to ask themselves some very serious questions, because a lot of these people will have children invested in the future that they're going to indoctrinate the children into. And it depends how far people go. Some people are just money orientated and will never touch those people. They're just so obsessed with this world. There is nothing else to anybody else other than that in this world. You can't reach those kind of people. It's everybody, the individual. They've got to do this for themselves. They've got to do the research, decide what participant, if anything, they're going to be. I certainly didn't choose it. It all came and knocked on my door. I wouldn't recommend it for anybody else other than somebody who got to the point like I do where I've had enough of this. It's taking a minute, send me a paper bill, I'm going to try this. There's my bundle, this is where I'm at. They don't want to talk to me. So, as far as I'm concerned, there's teeth in it, because I should have been, you know, they're claiming now, because they won't send me any more valid bills.
Thank you very much for coming on, brother. It's been very informative and plenty of threads of information for people to catch up on, and thanks a lot.